Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 108.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on true custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques, bringing you the custom club fitting experience of your life and lower scores always. About 9 months ago, I did a very informative interview with Jamie Donaldson, Europe's senior AimPoint instructor, where we talked about the benefits of learning to read greens using the AimPoint Express process. A little before this year's PGA show, Jamie contacted me and suggested that I do another interview with him, but also at the same time with Mark Sweeney, founder and developer of AimPoint Golf. I enjoyed learning a lot from Mark and Jamie in this interview. But the most important things I think I learned, and hopefully you will too when you listen to this, are some very simple principles to help you base how you practice to improve your putting. So as you listen to this interview with Mark and Jamie, have your ears wide open to see if you can pick out those principles too. Enjoy. Welcome, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast. I'm excited today to do a three-way interview about many things AimPoint is one way I'm going to portray it. Speaking today with Mark Sweeney, who's the founder and developer of AimPoint Golf and inventor of the AimPoint virtual putting line and AimPoint green reading method. Jamie Donaldson, who has over 19 years of golf coaching experience and is Europe's senior AimPoint green reading instructor, and I could spend the next 10 minutes talking about all the things you've done and all the things you've done with many high-level number one tour players, thousands and thousands of golfers. But this is going to be a lot of fun because I think we're going to talk about some things that certainly I don't know a lot about, but that I know you guys are doing to try to make the whole AimPoint world even better. So, Mark and Jamie, thanks a lot for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, you tried to not jump on each other. That's good. Well,
we'll do our best.
Yeah, there you go. Well, if you would, we're going to have fun. Please talk a little bit first. I think Jamie, you talked about this maybe when we did the separate podcast, but a little bit about the story about the two of you first connecting, and also share any other things about your partnership you think might be interesting to our podcast listeners. And be kind.
We're not really.
Be kind.
We don't really have a partnership.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You start then, Mark. I'll agree or step in.
Well, Jamie was the first AimPoint instructor in Europe. How long has it been now? 7, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
8 years at least. It was. I think it was the beginning of 2010 or the back end of 2010.
Yeah, it was a while ago. So I was basically passing through London, I think, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, can you come over and we'll do an AimPoint clinic and let me learn about it and get certified?" And we did. And he was the first person I had outside the United States, actually. I think very quickly he kind of gravitated towards it. It was the original midpoint read back with the chart, which was a lot more technical, but worked very well. But at least it was a very defined way of getting a good read, even if it took a little bit of learning to get good at it. And then basically he's largely grown all of Europe since then. So really become the lead guy in the continent.
Yeah, kind of neat. Jamie, what your perspectives a little bit about that? Yeah, getting together.
Well, I'd seen AimPoint coached, and what happened was Mark and I started Skyping, and we started talking regularly about AimPoint. And this is how I recall it as well. I'd seen it done, and I had questions, and we just talked fairly regularly, didn't we, Mark? And it was it was a case of we kind of connected online, and the system was fantastic, and I could it was unbelievable that no one had ever developed a system this good for reading greens before. And from my point of view, it was a case of, wow, how could I have played golf for so long and had absolutely no way of improving my green reading? And because I didn't, I'd imagine that none of the other, or hardly any of the other 4 million golfers in England had ever had a way of learning to read greens. So I think what happened was I badgered Mark, and that's an English term for kept calling and kept talking.
Badger's a U.S. term too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So I badgered him, and he had a connection through London. I think he'd been working in Bangkok or something, and he turned up and had 2 days here, and I didn't know I was getting certified at the time because I was under the impression there was no there was no certifications available because there was just 24 instructors in America, and I was still a swing coach, and for me I don't know. We just kind of decided to meet Mark, didn't we? We didn't have an agenda. We just had 2 days.
Yeah, it was pretty loose.
And you shared everything with me, and I had a real thirst for knowledge at the time, and I was coaching swing, and swing wasn't doing it for me. And somehow over those 2 days, it dawned on me anyway that I wanted to coach AimPoint.
That's a great story.
And here we are.
And there you are about 7 years later. Well, let's dive into the next piece. And sometimes I still view AimPoint as a little bit of a paradigm shift, but only because I'm an engineer and I know sometimes how long it takes people to change their minds about doing things, right? But many golfers, obviously, and professionals have terrific success with AimPoint Express, but there's still those that don't understand the value of it for improving their putting. So, talk a little bit about what you think are sort of the challenges now to kind of keep making it become even known even better than it is, and people understanding it.
Well, I think that the people who don't understand the value are people who have never taken a lesson or have never tried it. Because if you actually go out and spend 10 minutes on the green, you see that it works. And so, but some people are so resistant to the idea of there being a systematic way to read greens that they won't even learn. They won't try. They won't take a lesson. They just say no, it can't possibly work. That's always frustrating because those of us who have actually done it realize very, very quickly how effective it is. And so it just takes, golf is kind of a slow moving ship to turn. And so it always takes longer than we expect to get people to learn new things in golf and for it to really get out absorbed with the general population. Express has actually happened very quickly. It feels slow to me, but we've been out about a little over 4 years now. And as of last week, I think we had 65 tour wins worldwide on major tours, and at least 200 tour players using it, loads of college players, loads of good junior elite golfers. So it's had massive growth in what feels slow, but in 4 years actually is pretty good.
Yeah, and just recently we've had the Brabazon, the British UK, the British stroke play was just won by an AimPointer.
So, talk about if you were to classify, what was the one major way to classify the most important benefit relative to being able to putt, and then how do you usually classify that for people? Just to, again, and people have heard, I've had you on before, Jamie, but it never hurts,
Mm-hmm. Well, if I go first, Mark, and then you
go ahead,
add your bit. If all the clinics I've given and all the people I've coached, I would say almost 9 out of 10 people, so 90% of people that I've introduced AimPoint Express to, would tell me that they would aim half of what they're now going to be aiming.
Yeah.
So basically, they're under reading by about 50%, and that includes a lot of tour players. And if you then say, well, if you're not choosing good targets, then a good stroke isn't going to help you. And I think a lot of people can learn to start the ball online, but if they're misreading greens, they still don't get any reward from starting it online. So I think the ability to choose a good target that rewards a good start line, people can then kind of figure out start line, and they'll work out that bit. And it's easy, you know. There's not a lot of instruction needed. I mean, sure, technique can be dealt with, but I think if your intention is it starts with a good read, then you're rewarded for good actions. So that's my point of view, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you have a bad read and a perfect stroke, you'll make nothing. And that's what people don't realize is some people say, well, I'm going to work on my stroke for a while and then eventually get to the green reading. It's actually backwards, because you'll probably make more with a bad read and a bad stroke than with a bad read and a good stroke. You know, because you're accurately starting your ball on the wrong line, and what happens is your stroke will start to disintegrate because you're not going to sit there and watch yourself miss it over and over and over and over again. So, in our opinion, you know, good green reading comes first. But without a system, you're just really relying on trial and error, experience. And we know people who played golf for 30, 40 years who still say, I just can't get the reads right, you know, because when you're only looking at it, it's very, very difficult. It's just not something that's easy to do. So,
yeah, when you miss with AimPoint, you can understand if your number was wrong, or your speed was wrong, or your start line was wrong. But most golfers, until they've learned AimPoint, just miss. They just keep missing. Don't know why. But one of the things we teach in the class is when the ball doesn't finish where you expected it to, now take a look at it. Was the curve greater or less than you expected? Could the number be different? There's all sorts of things you can do with arm bend to calibrate. So we get people actually analysing missed putts and making a better decision next time. Whereas if someone eyeballs a read and they underread it, it's not going to tell them anything for the next read.
They don't have any way to get better, really.
No,
they're just kind of hoping. Yeah,
they just keep going.
Yeah,
they just keep hitting putts, and they don't know whether it's a read issue or a start line. They just know they're not making enough putts.
Yeah, great way to.
Yeah, and most people tend to blame their stroke, and a lot of times it's not the stroke that's the problem.
Yeah.
Stroke's a symptom of having a bad read. A bad stroke's a symptom of a bad read sometimes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that leads us a little bit into, you know, the initiative that I guess I wasn't aware you started in 2016 related to golfers improving their putting speed control. And as I told both of you, I bought your speed strips, and very interesting. So talk a little bit about how this started and what your process has been to help golfers improve in this skill.
Well, it started because when people learned AimPoint and their reads were good, almost all their misses were speed misses. And we realized there really was no systematic method to train speed or to understand how to be adaptable to different green speeds, which was really a big problem for most players. And so we started getting into that because otherwise we were kind of hitting a wall on how much we could help people with their putting. So we got the aim good, and we really need to get into speed also, because that was kind of the next big issue that if you ask somebody, how do I get good at speed, it was kind of the same answer. They would say, well, just go hit a lot of putts. And that's not really ever
and develop feel, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
magic feel.
But the minute the green speeds change, everything changes, and some people still couldn't control speed regardless of how many putts they hit. And so we really systematically started looking at how to control speed, what methods of controlling speed are more forgiving and more adaptable than other methods. And we started that kind of softly in 2016, but now every class I've taught for the last 18 months or so has been a mix of AimPoint Express and speed. It's usually half and half.
Oh, that's neat. Well, Jamie, over to you then a little bit about this topic.
Yeah, well, I mean, the speed class is fantastic, and we've been teaching a lot of it. Certainly in the last year, it's been taught more widespread by instructors. But the thing I've noticed about speed would be that whenever we would question a player about how do they control speed or how do they practice speed, no one could give us a satisfactory answer. and a lot of the time it was just down to just they might get their speed right that week, but there was never a real good drill that they were using to develop it, and they couldn't even really tell us what they were doing to change speed. They'd sometimes tell us that stroke length was longer. You'd even have people telling you they just hit it harder the further the putt needs to go. But very rarely did we hear the combination of stroke length and tempo being mentioned. And what Mark's done is he's worked out what length stroke goes with what consistent forward time, and the forward time is measured in milliseconds. And whenever we'd coach this, people would believe that stroke length is easier to manage, when in actual fact, people that we're coaching are much better at managing the forward times, and the forward times are measured in milliseconds. They can feel that more than knowing how long their backswing is. So what's your thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of the standard model was that you should have the same rhythm and the same timing all the time for every putt. And what we found was that actually puts massive amounts of pressure on your ability to control your backstroke length, how big your stroke is. And most people are very unaware of their backstroke length. And when I say massive pressure, I mean you've got to be accurate to like an inch or less to really have good speed. And most people, very few people in the world are able to do that. So we kind of took the opposite approach, which is let's not put all the pressure on your backstroke length. Let's put more pressure on your timing, which there's actually a huge difference in feel between a slower stroke and a faster stroke.
Yeah, and if you swing it short, you can instinctively speed up your forward time. If you swing it long, you can always slow it down. But most of the people don't know how long their backswing is, so then they weren't altering their forward time to match. Which is where what we're coaching. We're coaching people to experience all the stroke lengths, all the forward times, and when they're exposed to it, they'll find one where they feel they roll the ball best. But when you're playing golf, you're always, in my opinion, players are always changing their forward times to suit the scenario.
You mean to suit the green speeds and things like that, right?
Yeah, or uphill, downhill.
Yeah.
You know, it's to teach someone one fixed forward time for everything doesn't give them any room for adaptability. If someone's got one forward time and they're amazing at it and they swing the putter too short, that ball will stop short of the hole.
So you're really getting them to experience what different stroke lengths sort of really feel like when they see something to measure it against, right? And
yes.
And yeah.
And quite often that what they think is the right pattern for them is very different from what actually gives them the best speed control.
Huh.
Yeah, and what we also learned is if you don't practice different timings, it's almost impossible to actually pull it off when it's time to use it.
Yeah, I mean, if you only practice one forward time and you're facing anything that's apart from a flat putt, then you can't have the ability to change anything.
Well, I guess
see. It's like,
wow.
Yeah.
I can see this is something you're going to that's going to get bigger and bigger all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase I use a lot in classes is if you only ever practice one depth of sand as a bunker shot, how can you cope with different depths out on the golf course?
Amazing. So, and so I think I mentioned before we had our little glitch that nobody knows about. So the strips have basically 3 different lengths for 3 different sort of types of tempos, right? And then people are seeing how far they're hitting a putt with those different lengths, or how fast they're swinging, and then they're sort of queuing in to get what really fits for them. Is that sort of characterizing it? Yeah,
that each of those 3 vertical lines on the mat are color coded, and the furthest left in each color code is a 10-foot putt, then a 20-foot, and then a 30-foot putt.
Okay.
And the forward time needed with each of the different lengths will send the putt those distances.
That's fascinating.
Right. So we get them to experience different ones, figure out where they get the best results, which is not always what they're currently doing. Usually it's not what they're currently doing, but also gives them a range, and if you practice different ones, if you have a really fast greens, you can adapt to that much quicker or really slow greens or really slow or fast putt. So it's kind of forcing them to practice different timings versus trying to be robotic.
Yeah. Robotic is not a good way to be.
Generally, no.
Yeah.
We're not built to be robots. We're built to be adaptable. It's hard. We can't repeat the same thing over and over and over and over again very well. So really the way our brains are designed.
So are any of the golfers or pros you're working with taking the strips out when they're sort of trying to self-calibrate at a tournament or event?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a great way to acclimatize for different green speed.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant way.
Yeah.
And it's also there's loads of drills that come out of using the speed strip. So what I've seen is players come away from trying to just hold putts and hit putts to holes. They're actually purely focusing on speed. So they've isolated the skill they want to develop. So there's no hole, there's no read. It's on a flat putt, straight putt, whatever. They're just hitting putts, and what they're doing is they're focusing on speed for once.
Great stuff. Well, let's move on. We could talk, I think, for 20 more minutes about that in other details, but I think it's got everybody's appetite whet a little bit. I recently saw that, I don't know when you started it, but you do have some type of a green mapping effort, and I forget the name, to be quite honest, but I think I saw it on the web. I don't know a lot about that, so maybe share some of the details of what's going on and how it's progressing and, why you guys are excited about that.
Yeah, well, I basically did it because it's the same software I used on TV with the Golf Channel. It's the same software that I used since 2003 to do all of our putt simulation and calculate breaks, and it's what's used to validate the express read. And I finally decided to just kind of make it publicly available. I've always used it for myself, but it's never been available to the public. And we've been scanning greens since 15 years. We've been scanning greens for very specific purposes. But the idea is that if I can make this available for players before and during a tournament, that they could actually prepare better on their computer, because they can go in there and they can simulate kind of any slope, any green speed, any wind speed, any putt they want to on the actual greens they're going to be playing on. And so we've done some early releases. I did 3 or 4 PGA Tour events, including Sawgrass, the players. Just did the Women's Open last week, had a number of players in there running putts and learning the greens prior to the Women's Open, and even the night before after we got some pin positions. And it's really a prototype effort, but we're really plans now to push it out on a wider basis. Now,
is there and I had mentioned, I had seen a name of it. Isn't there somebody that you're partnering with it? Or maybe not?
Well, no, there's a guy who does the green scans for me. It's called GreenScan 3D, and he's done my scanning ever since 2003. But he basically provides the green data. He does a very, very high resolution, very accurate scan, and then I take that and I pull it in and apply my physics to it.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, over to you about that part.
Well, it's that's really Mark's side of things, but I think for the people listening to this to realize that Mark has created a simulator. Can we talk about that, Mark?
Sure.
Yeah. It's a simulator where you can pull it up on your computer, and you could have all the 18 holes of the tournament you're about to play, and the greens can move in sort of 360 degree. You can move them up, down, out, in, and you can put a pin location. You can put a ball on it. You can click a button, and it shows you the ball in real time rolling from that location to the hole, telling you exactly how much it breaks, and you can see the speed of the putt. So you can, if you were preparing for a tournament, you could put the known pin location in, and you could put balls in different quadrants and look at how it affects break. So the idea of it is to actually really get to know the greens long before you ever even set foot on the golf course.
Yeah, because right now you go out in a practice round and you hit 5 or 10 putts that are fairly random, and then you move on, and that's it. And this way you can run hundreds and hundreds of putts in 15, 20 minutes sitting in front of your computer and see what the breaks are and the speeds and the how they behave.
Yeah.
And it's another thing that's a learning tool, right? Or it's
primarily a learning tool.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah.
So do you think it's going to get everywhere pretty soon?
Well, everything takes longer than I expect it to take. I expect everything to happen in a week, and it doesn't. So, so it's really a matter. It's really a matter of education, because people have gotten it, and I've used this forever, so it's kind of self-evident to me what to do with it. But but a number of people get on it, and their first reaction is kind of, what am I supposed to do with it? So I think I've got to really show the power of what you could do with this, because I used to show up at PGA Tour events, never having seen the golf course. But I had seen the greens we were running in 3D and run putts on them, simulated putts on them, and I knew exactly what the green looked like and exactly how putts behaved, never having been there. And so because I did that for so long, it was very obvious to me the benefit. But if you haven't been through that process like I have, there's a little ramp up period of figuring out how do you best use it to prepare, how do you most efficiently use it to prepare for a tournament.
Yeah. Did you ever stand on a green and say, hey, guess what? This is what this putt's going to do?
Oh, sure. I'd watch on TV and watch a player line up and say he's missed already.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know the greens, you literally, as they're lining up, you're saying he's already missed. And that's the power of it, is you're really learning without having to be standing on the green with a very limited time to just randomly hit putts, because you don't want to just randomly hit putts. You want to hit very specific putts. And on the simulator, you can do it in 1 second per putt versus going on the golf course and hitting 3 balls and retrieving them and walking somewhere else and hitting 3 balls, and suddenly the next group is crawling up on you trying to get you to move on.
And you're probably not learning much if you're thinking about learning if you're doing it that way. I'm sure maybe that's an oversimplification, right? I mean, they're trying to weave things in, right?
You're never going to have You're probably not going to practice the exact putt you're going to have when you actually hit your shot into the green. Because you have such limited number of putts you can hit in a practice round. Whereas with the simulator, you can get on there a month ahead of time and literally be running putts for a month before you even show up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can see where the pins are going to be. You can see the slope amounts. You can see direction. There should never be any excuse for not understanding direction of a green with this thing.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it could put the AimPoint line back into the viewer's home for any tournaments on television. They could be seeing what that ball will do before the television shows the putt being hit.
They could.
Yeah, it's really the same. It's the same software we use on television. It's exactly the same software. So you get the same accuracy and you get the same results.
Yeah,
fascinating stuff. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes in terms of the future of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we think it's the next phase of preparation and green reading, because we have 3D data, but everything you do now is currently still in 2D. Yeah. It's still flat maps with numbers on it, and that only gets you so far. We have the ability to do it in 3D, and that's where we're pushing it right now.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff. Well, before we end, talk about maybe each of you 1 or 2 interesting recent success that's kind of gotten you excited. I'm going to guess internally what 1 or 2 of them might be, but anyhow, and maybe a tour pro, but maybe even somebody else that's not a tour pro for us, us mortal guys, right?
You want to go first, Jamie?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been so many. I mean, the most current for me would be, I've just been away working in Korea, and I've been working out there with a lot of KLPGA and KPGA players. And I worked with a young lady who was a fantastic ball striker and wasn't making enough putts, the usual story. And we worked with her in Incheon. I think the place is called Goya Academy, and with Jong Choi. And what happened was we had a clinic, and then we did speed, and she was just one of a group of 8. And she played the next day and shot 62. So she went deep, won the KLPGA event. Then we had another win the day after. So from this one group, we had 2 PGA wins straight away in the first event using them. So that's that for me, that's kind of the most current one. We've just had the British stroke play winner was an aim pointer. He's coached by Mike Hansky, who coaches AimPoint, and that's pretty big. I mean, we've had quite a few, and the Spanish Open winner is an AimPointer. Right. So it's kind of across the, and we just lose track of club level wins. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's almost impossible to keep up because there's so many people using it who Jamie and I personally haven't trained, so we're not really aware of how many people are actually out there doing it.
Yeah.
It's impossible to track, and I think the biggest thing would be possibly how many people actually, and we talked about this before, will tell me they actually enjoy putting again.
Yeah,
I think the big win for me is people don't enjoy putting until something changes for performance-wise, and that's either a lucky week or they learn AimPoint, in my opinion.
Well, everybody always thinks they can make every 10-footer or 20-footer, or if they hit a lot of greens, that why aren't they making a lot of them, right?
Right.
So
quite often, the better they hit it, the closer they hit it, the less putts they make, and the more frustrated they get.
Yeah.
They miss greens, they chip and putt, then the swing improves and their game gets better, and they suddenly hit this wall where they say, wow, now I understand my putting isn't that good. And it's just expectancy.
Okay, well, over to you, Mark, then.
I would say most recently, just watching the NCAA championships, both the men's and women's regionals and the finals, there's a lot of people doing AimPoint, both the men and women. And there are people, again, I wasn't aware of who were using it. A number of the Alabama girls players are using it. The winning team, I think it was Auburn for the regionals. The winning putt was like a 20-footer. The guy did AimPoint in about 2 seconds and drained it and won the championship on that. And just to see that it's really out there being used effectively on a fairly wide scale, whereas 4 years ago it didn't even exist. This read didn't even exist, and now it's really taken hold, especially with the junior and college market. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm just about to start helping a junior college program that had stopped in 1982, and they're reinitiating it. Right, so I've already I know Scott Sikorsky. Maybe you do too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to get Scott to come in for a day with these kids. It's probably going to give them a good edge, and probably sure get them something they had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's so good for younger golfers because it saves them 10 years of frustration or 20 years of frustration on the green, just not understanding why the ball does what it does.
Yeah.
And you can learn it very quickly, and then you can really move on to line and speed after that.
Yeah. Well, you guys have been very kind to each other during this interview. That's great. We talked up ahead. You were teasing
being very polite right now.
No, that's right. Well, we have one more chance. But any final words from each of you about just some things maybe you've already said, but other things you want to emphasize for golfers to remember to help them putt better?
I would say, the read was always such a frustrating thing in the past. It's actually really, really simple. And people have a hard time believing that, especially the people who haven't gone out and taken an AimPoint clinic, but it really is easy. And so you really just kind of want to learn that, get it out of the way. And then the hard thing after that is speed control. Speed control takes the most time to develop, but there is a way to learn that much better too. But you've got to start with the read. If you think that you're going to keep working on your stroke mechanics forever, and finally when your stroke is perfect, then you can worry about read and speed, you're looking at the wrong way, because you'll actually putt worse and worse, and then that'll frustrate you, and then you'll get into this endless cycle of something's wrong, I need to change something. So get the read out of the way first, and then focus on the other parts of putting.
I thought it was fascinating. Sometimes you get these little light bulb moments, right? And the speed control part really is harder, isn't it? Because it's about the human part a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
It's more about the brain. The read's easy. It's A plus B equals C. Speed's not quite that simple. There's lots of different ways to have good speed. Different players do it in different ways, whereas the read is just the read. It's like getting a yardage. A yardage is a yardage. How you respond to speed is very individualistic, and it takes a little bit of exploration with the player and testing to figure out how you best control speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neat.
And also, great speed can make up for bad aim and bad read and bad technique. If you do one thing great and it's speed, you definitely take fewer strokes than someone with one of the other issues.
Good. Well,
have we lost him? He's still there?
I'm here.
He's still here. Yeah, we did. We did
well
the last 20 minutes. I kept looking over at my screen, saying, "God, I hope Mark's still there." Well, I am really indebted to you guys. The people listening to this are too. That you did this today and shared a lot of really great things. I put the web links for the AimPoint site. Any other things that you guys send me later that you think I might put in the show notes, I'll do that. But it was fun to see you both at the PGA show and corner you a little bit. But Jamie, in the beginning, I have to say you were the one that said, "Hey, let's do this," and then Mark said, "Sure." So appreciate you doing it. So thanks a lot.
I just do whatever Jamie tells me.
Oh, really? Well, Jamie, you need to hold on to that then.
Well, listen, thanks for giving us the chance, Tony.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Mark and Jamie, thanks for sharing your knowledge and your passion for helping golfers improve their putting. The biggest takeaways to me from this interview are that learning to read greens is actually something that is simple using the AimPoint Express process and something that you can do quickly when you're on a green. To be a great putter, learning to read greens should actually be priority number one for you. And learning great touch and feel and speed control is a skill that can be learned, but one that is actually more difficult than learning to read greens. It is interesting that many TV golf commentators aren't on board with the value of AimPoint green reading and how it can help golfers putt their best. Well, guess what? They don't know everything. Trust the fact that thousands of us mortal golfers and many winning tour pros are using AimPoint Express to help them putt their best. So I put a number of links in the show notes, the home site web address for AimPoint Golf, a link to find an AimPoint green reading instructor near you, and also a link to the AimPoint speed strips to help you learn to practice improved putting speed control and feel and touch. Well, that's it for today and episode 108. Episode 109 is in the works, and I know you're going to enjoy it. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com